Welcome back to Hear Our Two Cents. One of your hosts. My name is Allie. Cammy couldn't make it. She is soaking up the sun at a beach. Don't worry, I did bring a co-star, a special guest for this evening.
Hi, everybody. My name is Hannah. I am a multimedia artist. I am also a novice storyteller, as I like to call myself. And I'm actually really excited for this episode. So we're actually starting out a concept series. So Allie, can you explain what we're doing today?
So Cammy and I have thought about doing a review concept where we either watch a show, whether it be anime or movie or a TV show, either out of context, whether we get feedback like, oh, you need to see this episode, or if we see the pilot and just give our comments on it, things that we liked, didn't like, whether we would continue with the series, things like that. So we divided this episode into 3 different parts. The first part is before show discussion. The second part is after show questions. And the third part is general review. Today, we decided that we are going to watch what, Hannah?
So Allie was gracious enough to let me decide the series. And of course, I picked my favorite show, The Umbrella Academy. So my friend Allie here has never watched the show. She's going in blind and she's going to give her honest review, honest opinion on it. We're going to watch season 1, episode 1. The title is We Only See Each Other at Weddings and Funerals. So yeah, it's going to be exciting.
And if you guys do want to watch this show, you can check it out on Netflix. It's there now, and they actually have a season 2 as well. So, what do you know about this show, or how did you get into the show?
That's actually an interesting question. So, The Umbrella Academy is actually based on a series of graphic novels with the same name. It was written originally by Gerard Way and illustrated by Gabriel Ba. And if that name sounds familiar, Gerard Way is actually the lead singer of a little band called My Chemical Romance, otherwise my favorite band in the world. So I am a little biased, I'm not going to lie, but it is a genuinely good series. I love it. I grew up on the comics. So to see this come to life on screen was very, very, very exciting for me.
Didn't the comics come out like early 2000s or something like that?
Oh yeah, 2007 was when the comics came out. So they're pretty old. They're pretty established. There's 3 volumes out right now. The 3rd one just came out recently. And it's interesting because the series itself follows the comics loosely, whereas they make respectful references, but it does its own thing at the same time, which is also very interesting because you know how comic book readers tend to get really angsty when the adaptation isn't 100% faithful, right?
Yeah.
I can relate to that. I'm not trying to put down anybody with saying that, but the changes made in this series, I feel were really enriching. There's more diversity compared to the comics. There's more range when it comes to the actor's experience. We have one actor that was in a couple episodes of Game of Thrones. We have one actor that was legit on Broadway in Hamilton, which is amazing. And then we have some actors where this is actually their breakout role. So it's very interesting to see that diversity in so many different levels. So, Allie, we already established that you never watched this show before and you're not super knowledgeable about it, but let me just ask you this question anyway. What do you know about this show?
I know that there's like 5 main characters that are somehow related to each other. They have these super abilities. There's a talking monkey in the show.
Who's not Mojo Jojo.
Exactly.
As she keeps saying.
And that's really all I know about it. I don't know whether these heroes, if you can call them heroes, or if they're more like the heroes and the boys from Amazon Prime.
Oh,
I don't know which side of the fence they go on, but I'm just going to assume they're the good ones. We're going to go ahead and watch the show, and we'll be back.
We'll be right back, everybody.
Hey guys, we are back.
We just finished episode 1. So that was pretty cool, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so I just want to give a fair spoiler warning. We are going to be talking about some details in episode 1. So if you haven't watched this episode already, go ahead, pause it, go watch the show, and come right back to us, okay? But if you don't mind it getting spoiled, we're going to start our discussion. I'm just going to provide a brief synopsis for anybody who's still kind of in the dark. On October 1st, 1989, 43 children were born to mothers who show no previous signs of pregnancy. I was trying to sound like the narrator.
Yeah, you did a good job.
8 out of 10, hopefully. Anyways, so we have an eccentric billionaire, Sir Reginald Hargreaves. His mission is to go and find as many of these 43 special children as he can and adopt them. So he ends up getting 7 of them, and he creates this team, which he dubs the Umbrella Academy. So, Allie, what are your thoughts on episode 1 of the Umbrella Academy?
Well, my first initial thought, and it literally happened in the first, I want to say 5 to 10 minutes of the show, was this show starts off with a bang. It doesn't kind of drag it out to like it's not a slow burner in that sense. You get that slow introduction to the characters, which is done very, very nicely. And you get the points of their different lives and you start to see some of those aspects. But the first scene that just snaps to my attention is literally a woman jumps into the pool and she went from being just a normal average girl, nothing, different about her body. She jumps into water and all of a sudden she pops out pregnant.
Could you imagine that happening to us? I would freak out.
I know. It's just so crazy. So that was like my immediate reaction was just like, oh, this is not going to be so slow. It's kicking up. And then the other thing that I liked too was the music that came along during that time period of the first with the violin playing. I love that it kept pace with the show. So on parts where it kind of built up when it started off a slow, dramatic in the beginning.
It caught fire.
And then you'll see a scene where Diego, who's number 2, he starts fighting these people and you hear all kinds of just intense playing going on and it just matches the scene very, very well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I feel like the intro is very effective. I agree with you on that. You got to feel for these characters and where they're at in their lives and a good feel for their personalities too, I would think.
I like that they showed some real life like issues and topics, things that people can really pick at and relate to easily, whether it be the bitterness or neglect or regret or distancing oneself, like all those things that people might be doing and not know, or you just see in a character. Someone can say, oh, I either experienced that or I know someone who has, or, not being good enough. Like all those things are things that someone at some point has probably felt.
Right.
So I like that very human aspect that they took and made like part of the show when it came to the heroes. It wasn't just like, here's their persona and this is it. That's all you get. And you might see a little bit of their human side, but not that much. No, it's like you really did get to see.
Right. To kind of piggyback off of that concept, it really showed the aftermath. It did go into little glimpses of the past and how they were all kind of celebrated and they were exposed as far as like the media in that sense. So now that they're all 30 years old, it shows the aftermath of all that and how it has some of them processing that big ordeal of life and the trauma that they've experienced. And that's another thing that you mentioned, Allie. I appreciate the fact that these characters are given such human roles. Like, yes, they are these beings with superpowers, but that's not defining them. It shows the human part and the sacrifices that they've had to make and how they're still, some of them are still, well, not some, all of them are still processing in their own way what they have gone through individually. And it's very cool to see that because this genre of superheroes and things like that, it's not really talked about in that way. So my next question for you would be, what moment did you find memorable and why?
So my most memorable moment of this episode has to be the scene where they're dancing to that that song. I think
I
it was
think
like,
we're alone now.
yeah. And they're just all dancing, and they all are doing just different kinds of dancing. It's not no like synchronized, like we're in a boy band, let's go.
Yeah.
But they're all just doing different things. Klaus is like holding an urn, like dancing around the table. And, you know, it just was interesting to see their different personalities take form in their dancing. But one thing I took note of that is like, when you go back home, like when you go to like your mom and dad's house, you know, your parents, whatever, you go to your childhood, it seems like they were showing like you revert back to being a kid.
Yes.
And it's true. I mean,
absolutely.
If you go to your parents, you know, it kicks in. You don't mean it to. It might slightly put in there, and you're like, Mom, stop. I can fold my laundry. Mom, like, think about all the college students who go back home to do laundry or something.
I was getting those vibes,
you know?
yeah.
But this, it's like they all came home. He kicked on the music. You know, at some point,
they all responded accordingly.
They all responded. You know, at one point, probably when number one was 15, 14 years old, that they were used to hearing this music just blasting through the walls like they did, that it wasn't like foreign, you know? So that was one of the things that stood out to me.
I definitely agree with you on that. It was a cute and funny change of pace for something that was going on a very dark and serious route. And that's what I appreciate about this show a lot, is that it does know when to stop for a moment, whether it be deeper moment, a cute, funny moment like this one, just to kind of lighten up the mood and allow the pace to go as it is, you know, just to kind of pause and reflect on the moment. But yeah, I found that really cute. I love that little dollhouse effect that they had going on when it zoomed out and it showed everybody in their own rooms just jamming out. It was great, yeah.
So what's your next question you have for me? Bring them on.
Bring them on. All right. So what did you like and what did you want to see more of in this show?
One of the things I would say that I liked the most with this show was the dynamic relationship between the siblings. Now, when you're going into the show, you don't get to see the history. You're just, okay, Diego does not like number one. Like, they have this rivalry. It's not
things are made pretty obvious.
Yeah, but then you have number 7, who is kind of like the outcast of the family, like the black sheep, but she sees a lot of stuff.
She's like the Meg Griffin of the family.
She is very much the Meg Griffin of the family. Like, they just like, go away, Meg, like to her all the time.
Shut up, Vanya.
So seeing that dynamic and their interactions with each other, whether it be Klaus and Diego or Klaus and Alicia, like just seeing those different dynamics will be very interesting. I would love to see how that progress. I'm assuming there has to be some growth, whether it be like they can get over their past and their history. It would be very interesting to see that, and I'll keep going, you know, because it's something that everyone can relate to. If you have siblings, you know, you can relate to either they're being like, you're the best of friends with one of them and you're like okay with the other, and then the third one might be just like, I don't know who they're related to. Like, are they adopted? Like, who are they to me? Like, we're just so different, but you still love that person anyway because, you know, they are your sibling. So
right. And what's cool about seeing such a big set of siblings in this case is that everybody did go through trauma, period, but each kid went through something significantly different. So in terms of relatability, there's a story here for almost anyone to kind of reach out to and kind of get touched by it in a sense. So my next question for you would be, who is your favorite character so far? And do you have a character that you feel like you relate to the most?
So far with episode 1 in the books, my favorite characters, I'll say characters with an S because it's a toss up between my situation.
That's fair.
Is number 5. I love him for like his wit, and plus he was like in that fighting scene at the donut shop, just like kicking butt.
Oh yes.
And it's funny because he's like, he acts so grown, but he's in a kid's body. So that just made me kind of like laugh. It's like, you know, he had to see some things with his powers to make him like act the way he does. And I like Klaus for
oh my
his
boy.
his humor and like comedic timing for me is just like he gives a good break in the show.
He knows what to say and when to say it.
So those two for me are my favorite. What about you though?
Well, in terms of the first episode, I would definitely say Klaus. He was one of my favorites in the comics as well. So his character translated pretty well and got a nice little refreshing update. And I would also say Allison because she was also my favorite in the comics. And again, her character translated pretty well to the screen. She's got this cool little feisty attitude, which I totally love because I can relate. So yeah.
I think I said like Alicia at one point. I meant Allison. Just a correction now. I'm bad with names, so I'm sorry, guys. But I want to at least put out in the record that I retract my earlier statement.
I correct myself. So the next question would be, if you could have any of these Umbrella Academy members' powers, whose would it be and why? And you can only pick one, so sorry about that in advance.
Okay, if I had to pick a current, like, based on my knowledge of what is going on in the first episode, you have Allison who has, I hear a rumor, and then it looks like whatever rumor she hears, it comes true. You have Diego, which seems like he's just like his fighting ability is just
I don't want to say much because
on point. Like he just, I don't know if there's more to it, but from the first episode, he's just throwing knives, being like, basically in my head, Diego is Nightwing. Like he's just he's just a Nightwing.
It's so funny that you say that.
And then the other guy, he's just big and strong. Yeah, Luther. And then he just comes back from the dead. I'm calling that as his gift because he overdosed and then just popped up and was fine.
Let me just make a point here. My dude goes to rehab. 5 minutes later, he ODs and he learns nothing.
Yeah.
Slap on the wrist, Klaus.
So for me, I would have to say actually number 5. I think it would just be, not only is it, I think, very useful when you're fighting because he can just pop in, pop out, pop in, pop out, but just the ability to go whether forward or backwards in time, it would be very interesting prospect to see. Now, if I could control that, that'd be amazing, but I don't think I'm going to just guess that it goes wrong somewhere somehow or has a big drawback. What about you?
That's a tough one, to be honest. I want to say Klaus's powers, but then there's a big drawback on that too, because then you've got ghosts constantly screaming at you. But then the ghosts could be cool and friendly, and they could help you out with things that other people can't. So I kind of want to say Klaus. It's between him and the rumor, but I mean, all their powers do have drawbacks. So the things that you think are good end up backfiring in some way when it comes to Allison's powers. So I think I'm going to do Klaus.
Okay. That was like, I think number 2 for me would be him.
The thing is, he can make his powers very useful, but he's holding himself back in so many ways for reasons that are validated. But yeah, he could easily beat all of them with his powers, but he's just kind of holding himself back.
I think we did all the questions that we thought, unless you have any more.
I have a couple more. So, do you have any predictions based on the first episode? Do you have any predictions for the season?
One prediction I have for the season is that number 5 will end up going forward in time and meeting with his siblings, like at a future date, and trying to talk to them and figure out, and they're trying to like fix the world in that sense, but he can't do too much because then it probably like blows up the world or something like that. But I see him probably going back and forth between times more. Now we know he popped up out of nowhere, but he also had that tracking bug. So something, something is up with him that he's in trouble with an authority of some sort that hasn't been announced after the first episode. So I think with the authority people, whoever they may be, chasing him in that sense, he's going to try and rush back and forth between the past and the future, and he might bump into his siblings, while doing so. So that's my prediction, that he'll bump in with one of his siblings in his time traveling endeavors.
Okay. I'm sitting over here like I can't say yes or no, but yes. And then I have one more question for you, and that is, would you watch the rest of this series? And then a follow-up, would you recommend this to your friends and family?
I would recommend this show. I think it's a good show. It's something that you'll be able to kind of have fun with the abilities of the people. Then you get kind of the drama of the family matter, but then you also have a mystery of who done it now kind of situation with the father being murdered or dead. I think he's murdered, but he technically had only a heart failure. So
that's what they say.
That's what they say, but I think that something probably did happen. You don't really know much about the father, but that would be something that'd be interesting to see further on of what happens with that.
Sure.
And the first episode, it literally ended as the world is about to end in 8 days. And it's
she's all like, okay.
Yeah. So that all together, it's going to be like you're seeing different clues and trying to build up.
It's hard not to continue after that.
You want to know like
it has
how
a lot
they're going
to offer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Knowing that you watch this show, right? Besides saying like you would recommend, what are some drawbacks that you have?
I don't really know how to answer that. Because there has to be something.
There has to be something. I mean, being that you read the comics, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone always knows, like, when you have a reading material and then you go and look at the movie version or TV version or mm-hmm. whatever, there's always, like, it might be slight, it might be something small, but there might be a bigger issue that you're like, man, this kind of didn't hit me until this point and I didn't really care for it.
I could kind of answer that, but it could go into spoiler territories in regards to future episodes. Based on episode 1 alone, one thing I can say is maybe they could have had more of an interaction with Grace, the mom.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like...
because she kind of is just there.
She was there in the background. And yes, that was intended because she always was just kind of there. But she did play a really big role. She essentially raised these kids because Reggie didn't want to. So I feel like maybe having her...
or like a flashback
of her, more of a presence in this episode at least would have been effective.
One of the things, and it's something nitpicky that I saw with this first episode, number one, his outfit and like his believability that he's a huge guy to me was so... like I couldn't buy it. Like I knew that it looked like to me like, those costumes that get blown up on the inside.
I'm
like
holding my tongue right now.
Like you're Patrick, you just get blown up. I'm saying Patrick from SpongeBob in case anyone.
When they rip the suits off and then it's all muscly.
Yeah, it's just like it's just like when he has like the arms, it's just not believable to me. I feel like whether they said like, hey, go, we're gonna, help you out. And I don't know. They just feel like it could have been looking more realistic.
I'm literally holding my tongue right now because there's a reason for that, but it goes on beyond episode 1. So I will, again, keep my mouth shut.
But that was the one thing I was like, all right, I wish it was more like realistic of why. Like, even if he has a deemed formality where it's like he is medically, like, something's wrong with him, because it seemed to be he was very concerned about when his arm got struck, like, to not show the cut. Mm-hmm. So there must be something wrong, whether it be with his back or with his front or something with his body. But I just wish it was, if there was something wrong, I wish it looked like just with the clothes on, it just didn't look believable. Like it looked literally like it's
off-putting, to be honest.
Yeah, it just didn't look like he had like, if he has strength, he should have like, it should be like nice, like ripped, like body kind of type or something. And if he, like in my head, I think of a bodybuilder. Like they were trying to do a bodybuilder, but it wasn't, like you could tell he had padding.
Yeah, I agree with you. But again, there is a real reason for that. So I won't say anymore in regards to that.
So do you have any final thoughts, things that you would like to expand on or talk about when it comes to episode 1?
Okay, so first off, I just want to make a comment in regards to me being a person who read these comics when they first came out. I remember going into Hot Topic and seeing volume 1 on the shelf. It was the last one. It was on sale. It's very vivid in my memory. And I remember asking for this comic and asking my mom, please, 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 can I have this? Because I was young. So, it had to be done. So she buys me this comic. I read it so fast. I was just so fascinated by it. And mind you, these comics came out nearly a decade before the actual show did. So for someone like me to see this show finally come to life was so overwhelming. And for it to be done right, I must emphasize that, for it to be done right was so appreciated by kids like me. There were parts in this show, and I'm getting chills thinking about it when I was watching it for the first time. It was so overwhelming. And some of the parts, I'm not going to lie, some of these parts brought me to tears. Seeing it finally become real, seeing my idol's work become an actual thing. And yeah, it's just, I couldn't have asked for more. It was everything I asked for.
And for people who don't know, and the reason why it was so important to Hannah, and you can expand on what I'm about to say or say, no, you're wrong, but it's because she herself is wanting to create graphic novels, is wanting to, eventually submit that to a publishing company. And
that's why I look up to artists like Gerard Way, because what he does is essentially what I want to do. And when I was a kid, I didn't know that being a maker of comics was a thing. I didn't know that that was a career path. When I was a kid, I used to draw comics about my dogs or my stuffed animals going on adventures, and I didn't think much of it. So growing up, reading more comics and learning about art and just not letting that go as a passion, it really means a lot to people like me. So yeah, you're totally right, Allie, with your discussion. But yeah, seeing it come to life and be translated for modern audiences, because let's be real, not everybody is going to go out and read the comic, although a lot of people have because of the show. But seeing it being made for people of all ages and have it have a more modern twist to it is also very important.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it any better if I actually watched the whole entire season, like you. So one of the things that I thought, it was something probably small, but it stood out to me, was they did a really good job casting the people in the roles that they were in.
Agreed.
Now, what I mean is, when you see number 5, not just because he physically can't be another character because he doesn't look, but just the way he acts, the way his features are, his mannerisms when he's doing his work, he can only be 5. Same thing with Klaus. Like, I don't think anyone could really be Klaus in that ensemble of cast. Like,
absolutely.
You know how in some shows they will switch characters? Like, you in your mind will play and be like, I think that person can be that person. Or I think they could switch and they would be fine. Or like, if you know another actor's capabilities, you might be like, oh, I think this person would have been the better actor. I honestly can think that they were all cast right in the roles that they are. I don't think number 7 could be Allison. I think I think they were perfect cast for who they were playing.
Oh, I definitely agree. The casting was spot on, and all the actors, I feel, offered something new and refreshing to their respective roles in regards to their roles in the comics. I feel like each one was heavily invested with the character that they had to play, which was great because, I'm sure we've all seen projects where the actors kind of phoned in their roles. You can tell everybody involved really cared about this script, this vision, and again, like I couldn't ask for more when it comes to this. Just the level of care and the level of investment put into it by everybody involved.
Did you know that Klaus, when I first saw him on a couple scenes, I don't know if it was intentional, but he really reminds me of Johnny Depp's portrayal of Captain Jack Sparrow. Like, I was just like,
yes, I'm so happy you brought that up.
I was like, this guy is basically like a mini version.
I call him my hobo pirate.
I was like, when you watch the scenes and like his mannerism, like he's very fluid with his arm movements.
He's very flowy, yes.
Yeah, and it just...
And that guy liner, let's talk about that.
Yeah, he had a lot of guy liner, and Jack Sparrow had a lot of guy liner. It just reminded me of
and then his very carefree movements and his just carefree attitude and the way that he just conducts himself. Yes, very similar, for sure. So Steve Blackman was the showrunner for the Umbrella Academy. I honestly feel like this was a great choice because he was faithful to the original source material. He put the right amount of care and time into making it its own thing, but still being very faithful to the comics in a respectful way. I think I mentioned that already before. I also want to mention too, something that I enjoy. It might be a little bit unrelated to episode 1, but you can tell that the cast is very tight and they're genuinely cool people. I, for one, have watched many interviews with them all together, and you can really see between their interactions and their little jokes that they have with each other, you can really tell that they actually like each other.
It's really cool when you see shows they do that. One of the things I loved about Game of Thrones, it's an amazing show, except for the last season.
Wah, wah.
And it will always be the last season that kind of... But the actors are amazing, the production's amazing, and to see the close relationships that they had in the interviews I would watch, it's really, really cool. Like, they all kind of grew up together after 10 years, and you could see that bond. And, you know, when they act, it's just, you knew they all kind of got each other.
Yeah, and the funny part is, I had mentioned it in the beginning, but the actor Tom Hopper, who played Luther, was actually in a couple episodes of Game of Thrones. He got the fire treatment.
Oh, really?
Yes. No. What is it called? Dracarys. Did I say that right? Probably not. Sorry, guys.
Oh, and I gotta go back and look.
Yeah. So yeah, another thing that is notable too about the cast is that they're diverse. And I love it. I mean, it's only practical that if all these kids were born all around the world, they would all look different and be different. So they did a good job on that. Like, all the kids have, you know, different ethnicities, and they have different standpoints and viewpoints of the world and different sets of trauma, like we mentioned before. So yeah, I really do like that.
I mean, like you said, it's common sense. If you're going to say there was 43 babies born on the same day, all being special and born across the world, when he's getting these children from across the world, they shouldn't all look one way.
Right. And they actually did have some feedback on the comics because they were primarily Caucasian. So, I mean, seeing that now and having it be modernized, like we said before, it only makes sense that it was updated and, you know, everybody's different.
And when we were watching it, you mentioned that Gerard Way acknowledged his fault in that, saying like,
yeah,
I didn't...
It wasn't intentional.
Yeah, it wasn't intentional, but he's like, I didn't think to make it more diverse.
It makes sense because I'm not trying to speak for anybody in this way, but coming from a certain viewpoint, it's kind of hard because if you do want to create a character that doesn't belong to your demographic or the way that you were raised or who you are, you don't want to do the character wrong. You know, as a writer, if you want to write a character that is of a different ethnicity or a different gender or a different sexual orientation, you have to be a little bit careful because you want to do them justice, but you don't want to disrespect a certain demographic, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's that pressure involved.
Yeah, I understand that. This is the point I'm going to kind of go against that in the same token.
Representation does matter, but you have to do it right. Matter.
And you have to do it right. There's so many times where certain people of color get put into certain categories, and that's all they stay as. So it's very good to, reflect the world that we're living in, where people are doing different things and are at different levels and everything like that. At the same time, I get what you're saying, like, as a Caucasian man, he can't write, I guess, the reality of someone that was a different race or different gender. Or you
can't immediately relate to.
Or immediately, I would say he
couldn't.
Or
speak for.
Okay. Yeah. That would be better, because every writer, you have an imagination. That's why you're a writer. So that's you should be able to write, it doesn't matter what color the character is, it's a character. If you assign them a different color after the fact, great. But you should build the character as your own. You shouldn't build it to build to a race, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Like, I'm not gonna write for this specific character so they are Hispanic, or I'm not gonna write for this way for this character to be Black. I'm just going to write this character. And if they happen to be Black, if they happen to be Hispanic, then great. That's what I think needs to happen, because we get, and I'm sorry I'm going on a tangent, but we get into these stereotypes that, yes, they're stereotypes for a reason, because stuff has happened. Like, there is a reason why it's like that. But not all Black people have to be the rapper or the gangster. Not all, white people have to be the nerds.
Not all Hispanic people have to have 50 billion siblings.
Yeah, like, it's just like, you need some diversity. Like, and I feel representation is literally like me being able to see someone different in a different role as well, not in the same role.
Right. And being able to see yourself in these characters. And I feel like the Umbrella Academy TV series really did a good job at that. So another point I want to mention too, and it's kind of more in depth of what we kind of already discussed a little bit, was the fact that these characters are dealing with trauma. Some a little bit better than others, but trauma nonetheless. So yeah, it talks about trauma in a practical way. And let me just say 2 words: daddy issues. My man, Reggie. Can we talk about him for a moment?
He's a horrible dad.
What the heck is going on with this guy?
They did not make, he's the character that, when actors say they don't want to be unlikable, I feel like he's the actor that's like, it doesn't matter if I'm unlikable as a character.
I love it.
I thrive on it, because it's like, there was nothing in this man that made me like him. I didn't hate him.
Oh, keep watching. That's going to intensify.
Yeah, probably. I can see it building, but I didn't hate him. I just was like, what's the reason of you? Like, why did you take these kids? You made them into your own super team. You branded them with tattoos at age 12.
He literally treated them like lab rats.
Yeah, and then it's like, you don't even show love to them. Like, you literally, they're trying to get your attention. And
they're humans. They were little humans. Yeah. And he just treated them like, I don't even know what to call it. I don't want to say animals. Because he treated my dude Pogo a little bit better than that.
Pogo is the monkey, by the way.
The chimpanzee.
I'm sorry, chimpanzee.
And also, can we talk about Pogo? Do you understand how hyped I got when I saw this CGI chimp for the first time? He was walking. He was real.
He reminded me of Alfred from Batman.
I can see that. I can totally see that. And you know what? In a sense, he was more of a paternal figure than Reginald.
Oh, yeah.
Which is crazy. Because between him and Grace, the mom,
it seemed like they were their family.
They were more hands-on.
And it kind of shows you that family can sometimes be not necessarily blood.
Oh, yeah.
Or who is designated as your father or your mother, but the people who actually take those roles. And they show you by their love, their care, their discipline, like
their presence.
Mm-hmm. So it really shows you, like, those siblings, they at some point chose each other. Yeah, we don't see that because in the first episode you see a lot of like discord, but they chose each other as siblings. Like if they were like, this is my family, even if One of them gets an OD sometimes.
Klaus, we're looking at you.
The other one writes a book all about us and a tell-all. We still love you. Like, you could tell that that's there underneath all the crap that they have to get through.
Let's talk about some of the interactions that we saw a little more in depth. I know you kind of mentioned it before, but I want to talk about this little rivalry between number 1 and 2, Luther and Diego brawling it out.
Yeah, I think it's that classic, like, the family in families, like, even in TV shows and in real life, you know, someone had got that inspiration from someone's life, you know, that number 1 was the more favorited child, the one that got all the praise or the special attention. Yeah. Maybe not praise, because he doesn't seem like someone that praises people, but he seems like he got something, acknowledgement of some kind. He does something slightly different for him that he didn't do for the others. And the others not blind to it, because they're like, we don't get why, you know, you're so like, dad's right, dad's this, that. But we want to be away from that thought process. I mean, you think about it, when they were all talking about funeral arrangements, and he said, number 1 said, oh, we need to bury dad at his favorite spot. And all of them said, what favorite spot? That shows you that he got a little bit more attention than the others. And the others are like, why didn't we receive that attention if we're your kids too? Like, we all got adopted under the same circumstances.
Right. And I feel like maybe it was because Luther showed that potential that he was dubbed as number 1. And I feel like one drawback to his character is that he is a very aggressive people pleaser, especially when it comes to authority figures such as dad. So anything that dad says goes, everything that dad says is right. And it's kind of sad because he doesn't see that dark side to the character of Reginald. He is kind of blind to it because he admires him so much. I don't want to go as far to say love. I mean, obviously he loves him as a father, but I don't know if you could really love a guy like this, or really, like, you can claim to, but I don't know if you can love somebody that treats you so bad.
I hate to compare this, but maybe in a sense, like, he got used to, like, they all got used to the mental abuse of it, or the emotional abuse, I guess I should say. I'm sorry. More of the emotional abuse. Like, it
became a default.
Yeah, they didn't get that attachment to him, you know, that emotional connection. And he just took anything that he would give.
Yeah.
And
that's the sad part. So another interaction that I found was pretty nice was the interactions between Vanya and Five. There were a couple little moments that they had there, which I found really cute. Like, she was kind of, in a sense, the caregiver to him in a couple little ways. Like, they had a scene where Pogo and Vanya were reminiscing about how she would leave him little sandwiches thinking that he was going to come back, and he never did, which was sad, but it was kind of cute at the same time, because poor little girl Vanya thinking that, you know, her brother's going to walk in the doors at any moment. And, you know, sadly enough, I mean, it happened, but a little too late. And then in the end, she was kind of carrying on his wound, and they had this little conversation, and he went to her. He chose to go to her to discuss this whole end of the world thing. So it was kind of cute to see that. And you honestly didn't even see that at all in the comics. These interactions that we're talking about, some of them, yes, but a lot of them, no, which is kind of cool. And again, another refreshing take on it.
So that's today's episode. Thank you guys for listening in. Please follow and subscribe. We did make a new Instagram as well as Facebook. It's here_our2 cents.
So, what are your thoughts? We want to hear your 2 cents. I know we talked about a lot, but I'm sure that we're missing a few good points here and there. So, join in the discussion, comment, subscribe, rate our podcast. We had a great time. So, again, we want to get you involved. So, go ahead and add in your 2 cents.
See, this is a time where I wish we had those, like, crazy effects where it was like, subscribe, like that.
Subscribe to my channel, bro.
So thank you everyone for listening. Please, we would love to hear your 2 cents. Appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. And thank you to our special guest. Hannah, for dropping by. And
thank you for having me. This was a blast.
So, happy Halloween. Bye, guys.